Hey friend, get ready to listen in on some long-form conversations and stories with people who are awakening the church for such a time as this. You'll hear from pastors, authors, advocates, and regular people just like you and me who are all part of the remnant rising to wake the church up. Hey guys, it's Brittney Jones. Welcome to another episode of the All My Favorite People podcast. With me today is one of my favorite people, Malaika Burley. Hey, Malaika, how are you this morning?
Hey, I'm doing good. Thank you so much for having me on.
Yeah, I'm really excited to chat with you. Malaika and I met through a coaching program, a group coaching program from our coach, Heather Schreiber-Burns. She has the Seek First CEO podcast that I highly recommend to anyone, whether you're in business or not, as a female entrepreneur or just a female Jesus lover. You can absolutely glean some wisdom from her. She's incredible. I was not intending on saying all of that, but she's just that good.
She is.
And the Holy Spirit speaks through her. And so I've been blessed to get to know Malaika through that group. And we've both been on a journey this last year or so of personal development, personal healing. Heather has a phrase, let God heal what you've been hiding. And I can say for sure that's been a part of my journey this year, is just allowing God to heal those broken, hurt things. And so I've got to see Malaika do the same.
Yes.
We've had a lot of really amazing breakthrough over the year, and it's been incredible to see. But she took some of that knowledge and that coaching, and she did something this year that she's been wanting to do for a long time. She is now an author. Congratulations,
Yes.
Malaika.
Thank you.
So
Thank
exciting.
Thank you. Thank you.
And Malaika is the brand new author of a book called Christ Over Cookies. So I hope that just sparked somebody's interest in this conversation, because it's an awesome title and something that I know I've struggled with and still to this day sometimes struggle with, choosing Christ over food in general. And so I'm excited to have this conversation with you today, just about all the things you're doing. So
thank you.
Malaika, will you start us off by sharing a little bit about yourself and your businessry, which is another Heather Schreiber-Burns ism, if you will. But share with us a little about yourself and what you've got going on, and then we'll deep dive into a conversation.
Thank you. Thank you. So like Brittney said, my name is Malaika Burley, and I am a mom of 4. I live in Florida. I am a divorcee. I don't know if that's the right term, but I'm divorced. It's basically what I'm saying. I am a lover of Jesus. I love to encourage people. I am also a certified group fitness instructor, as well as a certified nutrition coach. But more importantly, I have been on a personal weight loss journey for the last couple of years. And that all came about, after the divorce, after, just through the years gaining weight, but it hit heavy after the divorce, finding out I had cancer and all the things, and raising 4 kids alone. And so I found myself, really close to 400 pounds and needing to do something about that. And so I started my weight loss journey. And through the weight loss journey, the Lord birthed this business. And at the same time, that's when I was going through all those programs with Heather. And so like going through that transition and getting closer to the Lord, I really started learning to hear from him. And so this business came about, to where I now use my journey and my testimony to help others that are where I was, to help bring them along and bring them closer to Christ, which is where the name came from, Christ Over Cookies. It's really learning to turn to him, like you said, instead of the food. So that's kind of where I am now, and just using the journey and the testimony and just following the Lord's lead to see what he wants me to do next and where we're going.
Yeah, I love that. Well, first of all, I love that you're a fellow Floridian.
Yes.
Gotta represent Florida, right?
Yes.
On the podcast today. But I love that the original intent of this podcast, which you have a podcast as well, Overweighted is your podcast. But I'm sure you've experienced this as well, where like you start out with a vision and it's going to be like this one kind of niche thing. And then, God reveals something more to you, or you become interested in something new, and it kind of expands from there. But the original intent of this podcast was to take people and have them share their stories of past to present,
Wow.
their past to their passion, their mess to their mission, if you will. And so I love that, like, you really embody that that forward momentum of taking something that could have been a negative, that was probably, a negative for you, going through divorce
Mhm.
and finding yourself in that position of like unhappy with how you felt in your skin anymore, and turning that around, and not only doing it for yourself but then helping others. That's like so good. And that's like
Thank
literally it's my favorite thing. And that's why I have, my favorite people on sharing that. So um,
you.
share with us a little bit about that beginning part of that journey. Like, where were you kind of, you know, uh, we'll do a little group coaching here. Like, where was your low? What was kind of that catalyst change, your lifestyle and your kind of beliefs behind food and different things like that?
Mhm. Well, the funny thing is it wasn't one thing, it was kind of like you were just mentioning, a process that happened over time. And yeah, when I started my weight loss journey, it was at the end of 2020. But I had gained weight over years, like I've gained weight, lose it, gain weight, lose it, and every time find myself a little bit higher and higher. And then, like I said, it was at this one point after the divorce, and then I was trying to keep all my children together. So, an adoption process with my daughter, and also finding out I had breast cancer at the time. And so, um, I kind of got to the point where it was like, I don't care anymore. I just need to kind of survive. I was just in survival mode at that point. And so I didn't care about my weight at that time. And so I just would do whatever, just like I said, to survive. And so, of course, my weight was climbing. And once the fog kind of started to clear and some of the things kind of started falling off my plate, it was like, okay, it's time for me to start doing something about my health, because I know the Lord has things for me to do and I can't do it in the current state that I am. So I need to get healthier for me, for him, and for the kids, so that I could be here. And so I started the weight loss journey. Actually, I'm going to go back. The After I had a double mastectomy, and the physician had me start this medication. Well, he wanted me to start this medication, and so one of the side effects was the medication was potential for blood clots, and so in order to help that, one of the things would be losing the weight, and the other was to make sure I'm adding movement into my lifestyle. And so when he gave me the medication, I actually wasn't ready to start yet, not mentally. And so I didn't start taking the medicine. I had to really get to that point where I'm like, okay, now I'm ready to do this, because I didn't want to start the medication and not be willing to make the lifestyle changes,
Mm.
to help prevent, some of these side effects from happening, which I don't claim any of that anyway, but that's another story. But I didn't want to start until I knew I was ready. So yeah, I just had to get to that point where I'm like, okay, I feel like I can breathe now, and now I'm ready to get started. And when I got started, I didn't want it to be complicated, and where it was something more on, where it felt
Right.
like more pressure, more things. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to start as simply as I can and just work on changing one thing at a time, and just letting that build over
Mm.
time. And so that's how I got started.
Wow. Okay, now I'm curious, what was the one thing? What was the first thing that you were like, "We're gonna cut this," or "This is what's gotta
Yeah.
change?"
So okay, the one thing actually was two things, but then it went to one thing. So when I first started, I knew sweets was my biggest thing, which is part of where the title comes from. Sweets was my biggest thing. And so I was like, I'm gonna work on sweets, and I'm going to work on soda. And
Mm.
so for the very first 2 weeks of my journey, I'm like, I'm gonna try to not have sweets or soda for 2 weeks, just to see. And if you know anything about the way I coach, I don't tell people to cut things out because that can trigger them to actually want more. But this was just a challenge I wanted to do for myself.
Yeah.
So I said, I'm not going to have these things for 2 weeks. So I did that. And then after that 2 weeks, I let them back in, but I decided soda was going to be the one thing. So the first thing I really worked on was soda because I was at the point where I would drink probably about 2 liters of soda every single day. And I was drinking absolutely no water whatsoever.
Mm.
And I knew that, how beneficial water is for us and that I needed to start drinking it. And I knew how soda was not any benefit to me whatsoever. So that was the very first thing I worked on. And it was just neat to see too, once I cut back on that. At first I cut it back and now I have it, but with boundaries. So when I first cut back on that, I started seeing how that was triggering me for the sugar and the sweets and the other things as well. So yeah, so soda was that first thing.
Oh, ah, yeah. I did keto several years ago, and that's one of the things that I learned is how like the carbs and the sugar actually, once you eat them, your body's like, oh, I want more of that, which
Hmm.
makes sense. And so if you can be preemptive and sort of cut those things out, then your body's not craving it again and
Exactly.
again and again. Um, Soda's a tough one, I think, for a lot of people, but I think it's a great place to start because, like you
Hmm.
said, it's one thing, but it impacts a lot of your
Yes.
energy. It
Hmm.
impacts just how you're feeling throughout the day, that like groggy, the ups and downs of the sugar highs and things like
Yes.
that. Did you notice a difference pretty quickly once you started like just removing some of those more trigger items, if you will?
Yeah, I did. After I got past the headaches and the withdrawal symptoms and all of that, which is another sign that, hey, do I
Yeah.
really need this in my body?
Yeah.
Right. So yeah,
Right.
once I got past that, yeah, I did. I started feeling more energetic. It's funny that you said that because I was thinking the other day how when I first started the weight loss journey, I had like no energy. I and my room is right outside of the kitchen, but I would even call my kids like, "Hey, can you get me so and such out of the kitchen?" Right? That's how
Yeah.
low my energy
Mom.
was. Right?
Moms do that.
Right. But now it's like I will just jump up and do it myself. And I find myself just even in day-to-day activities, just doing more things. I've even gone out to walk, which is something I did not like whatsoever, but I've gone out to where I just feel like walking. I'm like, oh, I just want to get up and move. So
Yeah.
yeah, I definitely feel a difference with
Yeah.
not having that.
Yeah, I know now, like, I definitely am not still doing keto strictly at all, like, not at all. Um, but what I learned through that process was how to hear my body again and sort of how to listen
Yes.
to those, like, indicators, like, you're hungry now, don't push it. And like, now,
Yes.
you're going to eat junk if you push it another hour. Or, that those full feelings that, I grew up in a family where if you didn't finish your food and finish it quickly, you certainly were not getting seconds. And like, you know, um,
Hmm.
clean your plate. Like I grew up in clean your plate, era, if you will.
Yep.
Which
Yep.
there's something to be said for that, right? We want our kids to eat their food if it's, a good balanced meal, but that wasn't necessarily, what I grew up with. And so,
Hmm.
I even had to relearn what does it actually feel like to be full. And I'm
Hmm.
sure you talk about it or you've learned it over the years too, that like when you hit that 80%, you're kind of there. And then that way your body actually has that time to trigger that full sensation.
Yeah.
If you eat till you're feeling that horrible unbutton the pants full
Hmm.
sensation, you've gone too far,
Too
right?
far, yes.
uh,
And it's funny you mentioned that because that's in the book. I talk
mm,
about quitting the clean plate club and how some of us grew up with that. And it's really gotten us into this mindset that isn't really so helpful for us now, especially for those of us that struggle with weight and losing weight because we feel like, yeah, we want to clean our plates. Maybe we feel like we're wasting food or we're wasting
right.
money. But my thing is, you're either going to waste the food in the garbage or you're going to waste it because it's going to add to your waste, you know? And
Yeah.
so, yeah, so that really shows us how some of the mindsets and things we grew up with even affect us today in our adulthood. So yeah.
Totally. Well,
Mhm.
and so much of this is mindset. Can we talk about
Mhm.
that? Because
Yeah.
there's one, it's one thing to say, I'm not going to drink soda anymore. It's a whole different thing to understand really like kind of the self-care and the psychology and the
Mhm.
choosing. I always looked at it as like you're choosing yourself, right? You're choosing this
Mm,
like better version of yourself
that's
that's going
good.
to come in the future by making that. Maybe it seems insignificant of a decision at the moment, but it's self-care. It really is.
That's so good. Yeah, that is so good and true. And exactly, and I think that's where a lot of us fall is because we are choosing what we want in the moment instead of what we want later down the line. It's getting to that point that we have to remember there's a future us, and the decisions that we make today shape the future person that we are becoming. The person we are today is based on those decisions that we made in the past. And so, yeah, that is so true. It is a lot of mindset, and I think having a vision for your life and
Mm,
knowing where you're going and where the Lord's taking you, that will help you to set up those boundaries and remember that you're choosing, I want that vision, I want that thing that he has for me more than I want this soda right now or this sweet right now. So so
mhm.
good.
Yeah. I'm sure you talk about this too, but one of the fruits of the spirit is self-control. And
Mhm.
I think it's probably the one I've struggled with nailing down the
Oh yeah,
most
same.
personally. And I think that's human, right? It's human
Mhm.
nature to not have self-control. And we do live in a society and a world that says like, have more, have it now, like
Right, YOLO,
excess.
all the
Yes, YOLO, everything's in excess. Everything is
right.
you know, bigger, better, badder than the next person or the next meal or the next whatever. And
Mhm.
so I think reframing your mind to look at it um as self-care.
Yes,
And
that's good.
was it for you, was it I know, you had your children to think of, and I think a lot of moms, our bodies go through the ringer to bring these sweet babies into this world. And a lot of moms do struggle post babies to get get their body back. I think that's also maybe a toxic culture thing as well, that we
Right.
think like we need to look like we did pre-baby. Um, I certainly don't. And I know I look at those moms that do that. I'm like, good for you. Like, I don't
Right.
think that's in my DNA for that to happen anymore. But I think too that once you once you do it for yourself,
Mm,
like of course you have your kids and you've got them as, motivation. You want to be
right.
healthy for them. You want to be able to play with them. I don't know, your specific, reasonings as to why you wanted to do it, but I know for a lot of moms that's it. Like I
Yeah.
want to have the energy to run after my kid, or I don't want to be in my 60s and 70s and have them, you know, having to take care of me. I know those thoughts
Yeah.
kind of definitely went through my mind. But was there a reason? Was there like a motivator, I guess I should say, beyond beyond that? Like had you internalized it to become more about like you're doing this for yourself now? Because I
Mhm.
think that's a game changer too.
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. And you're right. The initial motivation may be, I want to make sure I'm healthy for my kids. But at some point, the kids are going to move out and they're not going to be there anymore. And you're sitting with yourself or yourself and
Yeah.
your spouse.
Yeah.
And so it has to be more than that. And yeah, I had to get to that place where it was about me and learning to love myself and wanting to be healthier and feel good for myself. And like I said before, also for the things that the Lord has for me to do, because I have a purpose here and a mission. And so I need to make sure I have the energy for that and that I'm able to complete it and have the energy to actually do it. So
Mm,
yeah, it did get to a point where it was more about me and the kids, not just the kids. Also, I want to get remarried, at some point, if that's what the Lord has for me. And I want to make sure I'm healthy and look as my best self possible for myself, but also for, my future spouse as well. So,
Mm,
yeah, so there definitely were more reasons than just the kids. So.
yeah. So what do you say to that mom who's listening to this and is like, that sounds kind of selfish to me. Like, I care about how I look. Like, God gave us, like you're going to have the people who, and myself included, you can make all the excuses, right? You can have that mindset of, well, God, looks at the heart, not the outward appearance. Like, we can sometimes even sort of spiritualize like staying in a place that's not super healthy. What do you
Mm,
say to that mom who's like, I don't have time to take care of myself. It sounds selfish to put myself before my family. Um, any
mhm.
words of wisdom?
Yeah, the only thing I can think to that, and I don't know if you've heard this example before because I've heard it several times, but you have to put your oxygen mask on first before you put it on someone else. And that's what they tell you on the airplane when they give you the safety instructions. If the plane goes down, the oxygen mask are going to come out. You have to put yours on first
Yep.
before you can help anyone else because if you don't have your oxygen, you're not going to be any good to anybody else because you're going to be passed out or passed away. So you want to make sure that you're healthy and in the best state possible. And some of that health is looking good because you feel better about yourself, you feel more confident, and you feel like you want to give. Because I'll say, when I don't feel like I look decent or if I don't feel confident, I don't even want to be around other people because I don't feel good. So, how can I serve others if I'm not there to help them? So, I need to feel good about who I am, what I look like, or whatever, so that I am in a position to even want to serve. And also, when you are taking care of yourself, you can then give from that overflow because you're filling yourself up. And now you can fill yourself up to the point where you have something to give. So if you are not taking care of yourself, you're not feeling good, you don't have the energy or whatever, you really don't have anything to give. And if you
Mm,
try to give from that empty place, then a lot of times that can turn in like resentment, bitterness because you're empty and you're giving from a place where it's you feeling like you have to give instead of wanting to. So
mhm.
if that makes
I
sense.
think a lot of women unfortunately operate from that empty cup
Mm,
and they're trying to overflow into the people in their lives, and it's like you're not doing yourself any favors, right? I
hmm
love that you also mentioned simple things like going for walks and like getting out in the sunshine. Like, I'm with
hmm
you, I don't like sweating. I'm a
right,
Florida girl, it's always
right,
100 degrees here.
and humid.
I can stay inside all day, that's a good day in my opinion.
Okay.
So I've had to have that mindset shift of like, it's not necessarily like, oh, I'm gonna walk and I'm gonna lose 10 pounds or anything like that. It's just like prioritizing myself in a way that is doable, that is, achievable. I'm not like, asking these huge things of myself because I'm not an avid
Yes.
worker outer. So, even a 10-minute workout session is like, I'm so proud of myself because I'm not doing that regularly. But even just going for walks, um, you also have a program. It's called Transform Your Transformation Tribe, Transform Fitness. So for you, I love that it's a combination of both things. It's not just don't eat this, right? And I'm
hmm
sure in your book that is not what's happening. Like, you're not just
Right.
telling people don't eat this or that,
Right.
because it is a lot of mindset, and there is a personal care element to it as well. But
Absolutely.
that you're bringing in the movement.
Yes.
um, my husband, who literally worked out 5 minutes ago before we started doing this, and is regimented and disciplined in that.
That's good.
I see the benefits of that for him, meant from a mental health place, from a,
hmm
just feeling his best. And um, maybe one of these days I'll put that into practice, Malika.
That's
Um,
okay.
so, full transparency, everyone. But talk to me a little bit about the movement piece of it too, because I do think that is important. And I think it's important for people like me to hear, like, you don't have to go to CrossFit tomorrow, right? Like you don't
Yeah,
have to kill yourself doing these crazy, hit workouts or anything.
right.
What does that look like kind of for a newbie, if you will?
That's funny that we're talking about this because full transparency, I don't like to exercise either. So, yes, I am a certified group fitness instructor, but I do not like to exercise. So, one of the things, what I actually teach in my classes, it's dance fitness because I love to dance, and that's a fun way to move your body.
Yeah.
So, for someone just starting, that's what I would suggest. Find something that's fun for you. Um, in a way to move your body, whether that's dancing or maybe like my daughter just bought roller skates. Maybe you like roller skating, skateboarding, riding your bike, whatever. Find something that's fun for you to do. It's recommended to do at least 30 minutes a day, 5 times a week. However, like you said, start where you are. So if
Yeah.
that's okay, I'm going to try to do 5 minutes a day. Start with 5 minutes a day and then just slowly increase that. Once you are consistently doing that 5 minutes, then add on, a little bit more. Now I'm going to do 10 minutes a day. And it doesn't even have to be 30 minutes altogether. You can break it up if you want to do 3 10-minute blocks a day. If that's a little bit easier for you in your schedule, then do that. But yeah, find something that you really enjoy doing and incorporate that. Exercise doesn't have to look like you said, like hit classes, exercise can be getting out and making girls' night bowling. We're going to be active for girls' night instead of just sitting watching a movie. So,
Yeah.
absolutely, find something fun for you to do.
No, that's so good. I love that. I love the idea of like incorporating friends and doing it with other people too. There's
Yes,
something to be said about that
absolutely.
community piece of it, and that
Yes,
iron sharpens iron, right?
yes, the
Um
accountability.
yes, we have a group that we're still in together, and we make goals every week. We sit together each week and make our goals for the following week. And my goals are always I always have an exercise goal in there, Malika. And
So
the
funny.
amount of times I've followed through on that are minimal. And so that's why I'm like, can we get a text thread going where we're like, I did my workout today? Because there is something about that, at least for
Hmm.
me, and I think for most
Yeah.
beginners, like I want a pat on the back. You worked out for 10 minutes today. Good for you, girl. Um, and that encouragement that comes.
Yes, absolutely. And that's a big part of coaching is that accountability and encouragement piece. That's really what I do for people in coaching. It's really just holding them accountable every week. So this is what you said you're going to do. So next week when we check in, I want to hear that you did it. So absolutely that matters and to know that someone's got your back and they're supportive and you don't feel alone in the journey. So
Yeah, I love bike riding. That has become one of
mm,
my favorite things to do. I can do it with my kids, and
yeah,
it
yeah.
doesn't feel like exercise. Honestly, the other thing too is I've, as silly as it might sound, that mindset shift of I switched my words from working out, which to me is like a dirty word,
Hmm.
to
Sounds hard.
exercise and
That's
or
good.
move my body
Yes,
even.
movement. Yes.
And even that little word shift and mentality shift with that, like, I think has been a bit of a game changer for me. Like I said, I'm not very consistent, but I always feel great when I do it.
Yes.
Um, and then I try to remind myself, like, remember how great you felt? But um, talk to me too about motivation because especially for I think people like me, I'll just use myself as this like perfect example of the girl who's like should be doing this and isn't doing this. Um, you're most people are not disciplined or self motivated enough to do this on
Right.
their own. Even
Right.
people like my husband, it's not like he wakes up and he's like, "Ooh, I can't wait to go work out." It's like
Right.
he he kind of back to what we were saying before. He has made the decision ahead of time that he's
That's good.
going to prioritize himself and his health, and you really can't talk him out of it. He
That's
wakes
good.
up not necessarily like excited to do it, but with a determination that like he's gonna make it happen.
Mhm. Mhm. That's really good. I think one of the things, yeah, so with motivation, we know it doesn't last. It comes and goes. It can be cyclical. We know a lot of people tend to get really motivated like January 1st, and it usually fades away by the end of January, mid-February.
If
So we
that
know
long.
that,
If
right?
that
If that
long.
long,
2 weeks in,
exactly.
I'm like, I did it for 2 weeks.
Right. Right. Exactly. If that long. So yeah, we know motivation is going to go in cycles. And there's a couple things that I like to do. One, like I said, do one thing at a time because that'll really help because you're not trying to do everything. And I think that's one of the things when we're motivated, we try to do all the things. And then when the motivation's gone, we don't want to do all the things
Yeah.
anymore. So if we just have one thing that we're focused on, that could help. Another thing is I like to have um, two sets of um, goals, I guess. And so, or suit like activity goals. And so one is for what I call like high wattage times, and the other is for lower wattage times. And that's based on, I have this thing called popcorn mentality. Like when you pop popcorn, when you put it in the microwave, higher wattage popcorns will pop it faster than lower wattage. But either way, if you leave it in, it'll still get popped. It just
Mm,
may take a little bit longer. And so like the
mm,
higher wattage is the higher motivation times. Lower wattage would be when your motivation is kind of low. And so what you do is you have a plan for those high wattage times. So when your motivation's high, these are all the things I want to do, right? But when my motivation's low, if I do just this thing and this thing, I'll still be happy and I'll still be
mm,
making progress forward. So you still are accounting for those times that you're not going to be as motivated, but if I at least still do these couple things, then I'm still moving forward. I can still pat myself on the back, even though I'm not doing all 10 things that I might do when my motivation's high. So that's a couple things I do to account for that, for the motivation. And the last thing I want to say about that, what really helps, and what I think might be working with your husband as well, is having a routine, because once something's set in your routine, it helps when you don't necessarily have the motivation to do it, but it's just a part of your routine. I get up, my exercise clothes are already in the bathroom for in the morning, so I automatically put them on, and now I'm ready to go. So I think that
mm.
helps a lot.
Oh, you're
Sorry, I
right.
just threw a lot at you.
You are so right. Oh my word. Okay, I needed this conversation more than I realized today, Malaika. But yes, you're 100% right as far as routine. And um, after going through stuff with Heather, I try to speak differently. And one of the
Mm,
things that I'll say it like this, is that traditionally speaking, I have not been so good at creating routine. And I do realize that sort of as a detriment, if you will, to my productivity.
mm,
I will gladly come and sit in here and do 3-4 hours of work on different projects and different things, but I don't prioritize 20 minutes to just take
mm.
care of myself in the morning. And so
Yeah,
I think you're spot on with the routine piece. And
yeah.
I love the high wattage, low wattage, because immediately, and sorry guys, close your ears for a second, but there's 1 week a month where I have no motivation at all whatsoever to do anything. And so it's almost like giving yourself grace in those
Right.
harder, whether that's a season of your life, or there's, something, you just a busy week at work, or whatever that
Hmm.
looks like, to give yourself that grace to say, yeah, I couldn't get the 30-minute workout in today, but I went for that 10-minute walk after dinner, and I got some sunshine, and I moved my body today,
Yes,
and that's okay. I think
that's
grace
really good.
for ourselves is a
Yes,
big piece of this conversation, right? Because
absolutely.
none of us are going to eat clean 100% of the time. None of us are going to do that exercise
Mhm.
every single day. Um, but to count the wins that we do have, celebrate, right, when you
Yes,
do it right, and then not beat yourself up when you don't. Um, there's
that's
a
so
doctor
good.
that I follow on Instagram, which sounds kind of silly to say. I'm obsessed with this doctor on Instagram, but I kind of am. And one of the things that he says that I think is would potentially be common knowledge to most people, but it just resonated with me, is like, okay, you ate one crappy meal, like the next meal gets to be a good meal. You get to choose,
Yes.
in that day, or that week, okay, I really messed up yesterday, or I missed the mark yesterday. Today's a new day. There's something about that from a psychological thing, a piece, I think, that um and giving yourself grace to nobody's
Yes.
nobody's keeping a scorecard, right? But
Right,
maybe
right.
you, and to give yourself grace when you don't do it perfectly.
I love that. I think that needs to be like the banner over it. Grace, giving yourself grace. Absolutely, because if you have that meal, where you missed the mark, what will tend to happen with some people is, oh, I messed up, so I might as well just go ahead and mess up more.
Yeah.
But if we're extending ourselves that grace, like you said, no, we start doing better with the very next meal. And so, yeah, that I love that grace.
Mm,
That's what we need more of that for sure.
yeah. So tell me a little bit about some of the coaching that you've done or that you do, some of maybe success stories or people that you've seen um, kind of take what you have to heart and change.
Yeah, so yeah, I actually just completed a challenge last month. It was the challenge for the new year, and that's exactly what we were doing is what we're talking about, learning to change the mindset, give yourself some grace, doing one thing at a time. And yeah, I've had some ladies in there that they've lost the weight and they're keeping it off because that's really my goal. I don't want you to just lose it. I want you to
Sure.
keep it off because you're making, these mindset shifts and changes. But yeah, one of them has it set up in her routine now, which is what I kind of just mentioned as far as like putting the exercise clothes in the bathroom at night. So now she's consistently exercising daily.
Awesome.
So yeah, she's exercising every day because it's just a part of her nighttime routine. She'll put the clothes in there at night
Mhm.
so that when she goes in to brush her teeth, she's, putting on her exercise clothes after she weighs herself and everything. And there's another woman that comes to mind where she said she had been praying for years, like to the Lord, like for an answer because she's been struggling with her weight. And she said it was like the last thing, she's gotten everything else together, in her mind. And it was the weight was the last thing. And after going through the program, like I said, she's lost weight and she feels like she has a handle on it now. And I will say it's not me whatsoever. It's nothing that I'm doing. Obviously, they're doing all the work. Like I said, I just give them the space to be accountable and give them the encouragement, talk things out. And a big focus for me is learning to, choose Christ over cookies, turning to the Lord instead of the food, and leaning into allowing Holy Spirit to lead you and give you those nudges, when
Mm,
maybe you're going for something like, do you really need this right now? Do you really, and just listening to him and letting him lead you. So
mm.
yeah, it's been really good to see other people having those breakthroughs and those transformations as well.
Yeah.
So,
I resonate with that. It is the thing for me that is still
mm,
looming, right? Like I've
mm,
done all the mindset work. I've, given up habits, bad habits. I'm better communicating with in my relationships. Like so much good has come out of this self-work. And girl, I just can't. I can.
you
I'm
can.
choosing not to, just do the thing already.
Yeah.
Talk to me about how then do you choose Christ over cookies or an addiction or a pattern that you've already set? Because
Hmm.
um, I think most people don't correlate the two. They don't
Hmm.
necessarily see the connection that
Right.
um, you're being more self-reliant, right? You're
Hmm.
sort of not
Right.
making good choices, right?
Right. Yeah.
And so how does Christ fit into our health routine, if you
Right.
will?
Yeah. One of the things I think it's important for us to remember is that we are first and foremost spirit and soul, then we're soul, and we are also body. But first and foremost, we are spirit. And so it's important for us to get to a place where we're being spirit led. And in the past or what we may be currently doing is being led by our flesh instead of our spirit. And so it's just learning to really lean into our relationship with the Lord and learning to hear from him. And because like I said, if you want Holy Spirit to give you the nudges, you need to, be listening for it and
Yep.
also hear from him. So just, yeah, really learning to be spirit led and knowing that the Lord made food and he made it delicious and good. It's a gift. But what's been happening is that it could be that we are using that gift in excess and it's turning into gluttony, which is a sin. And so obviously repenting, getting forgiveness and grace, again, for falling into that sin. Or it could just be even that we are turning to that gift of food instead of the Lord. So maybe if it's emotional, we're turning to him or turning to food when we're stressed, but we should be turning to the Lord when we're stressed. Or, maybe we're brokenhearted. And so we're grabbing a pint of ice cream, to fill that hole when we should be turning to the Lord when we feel brokenhearted because, he is love and we need to turn to him for that. Or if it's times of stress, instead of turning to the food, turning to him for that peace. And also just developing, like you mentioned before, the fruit of the spirit. So because what are the fruit of the spirit? Love, joy, peace, patience, that gentleness with ourselves even, and the self-control. And, there's other fruit of the spirit as well. But, those in particular apply definitely to our weight loss journey. So yeah, it's just learning to realize there is a connection there. And also the enemy doesn't want us to realize the connection because then we'll never turn to the Lord to help us fix it, So yeah, absolutely.
Yes. So this might sound silly, but do you recommend people, like, we'll just say believers, Holy Spirit led, someone like me, is there like a recommendation of like when you're feeling the urge to, grab the half pint and take it to the room with you? Like, do you pray or is there okay, talk to me more about that.
Yes, absolutely. That's exactly what I would say. Like learn, so one of the suggestions I made, and it's funny, it's kind of a joke, but it's not. So say for instance, your trigger is cookies, like you tend to turn to the cookies, right? When you're stressed or whatever. And so right, you want to pray about it and first of all ask Holy Spirit to help lead you and nudge you, when you're turning to food or whatever substance instead of turning to him. And but if you're not necessarily getting those nudges, or maybe you ignore them, because I've gotten them before and I still proceed, And so
Yes,
one of the things is like you can like stick your Bible in the pantry on top of the cookies, and that would serve kind of as a reminder, like, wait a minute, let me stop, let me pray about it. And if you're just wanting the cookie because you want the cookie, have the cookie. Christ over cookies isn't saying don't have the cookies. It's really stopping to reflect, am I turning to the cookies when I should be turning to the Lord? And so that's something that can kind of serve as a reminder. So even if it's maybe a sticky note, in the cabinet or something that would help you to remember, like, wait, let me stop and pray about it and say, Lord, am I going to this thing right now when I should actually be turning to you? And just taking that pause. So.
Wow. I think so many people need to hear this message and recognize that this is, I think I've heard people say it, it's like the most accepted form of drug abuse, right? Like food abuse. And, I'm guilty of it as well. I definitely, I
Same.
jokingly say like I eat my emotions, right? Like I'm feeling something and I'm a salty greasy girl, so I'll go for the chips
Oh,
or
wow.
the Chick-fil-A. So, something to just that hits, it's a hit of your
Yeah.
of, I don't know, is it serotonin or there's a chemical, right, hit
Yes.
that you get when you indulge in that thing. And I love that it's as practical as, like, talk to God about it. I know I do it with social media, like the endless, mindless scrolling.
Yeah.
One of the things we've learned in our group coaching with Heather is get curious, right? About why are you feeling that? Why are you doing that? Why is that your default? and sort of asking yourself those questions to get to the root of what's really going on.
Yes.
Um, I will share this, and then we can talk a little bit about the upcoming
Yeah.
virtual summit. But I used to be, and still, confession. It's confession day on the podcast. But I sneak eat. I would
Mm.
I would I would sneak eat things, right? So like I don't want somebody else judging me in that. I would, have the secret extra lunch or the whatever. And then that it causes shame and guilt. And
Yes.
then there's like a whole nother piece that comes behind like it's not just you're making bad choices for your body, but there's something else there
Absolutely.
at the heart of that, right?
Yes.
And so I think there is something to be said about really unpacking your why, like why you're
Absolutely.
doing that. Do you have any thoughts on
That's
that?
so good. Yeah. Yeah, a couple there's two tools in the book that I mentioned to, yeah, really help you get to like why am I doing this? Is I call it 4 S's. It's really similar to StepDAR that we learned in our coaching. But the 4 S's, it's saying, settling, stepping, and seeing. So what are you saying to yourself? What are the thoughts that you're thinking? And how is that settling in your heart? Because we know our thoughts and what we're saying to ourselves really start to form our beliefs. So, how is that settling in your heart? And then from there, how are you stepping into action? Because the things that we're doing are a reflection of the beliefs that we have, which is a reflection of the thoughts that we're thinking, or the things that we're saying to ourselves. And then seeing is what are you seeing as a result of that? Because whenever you step into action, obviously that's giving you some result. And so, like really going through that process of what am I saying to myself when before I sneak this food? What is it that I'm believing? What it was settling in my heart? How am I stepping into action? Well, obviously you're sneaking the food. And then what am I seeing as a result of that? And then if you want to change that, you would just kind of work backwards through that to get back. If you're not sure what the thoughts are that you're having right before, you can work backwards to think, okay, what is it that's happening right before I sneak food? What's going on? Is it something in the environment? Is it what am I saying to myself? What am I thinking right before this happens? And getting to the root of that. And then obviously, once you know what you're thinking, you need to change those thoughts. And that's the second thing is going through that renew process. And the renew is recognizing the lie, the rationalization maybe, because sometimes we'll say like, oh, I deserve this. Maybe if that's your rationalization, right? But
Mm-hmm.
is that the truth? Not really the truth, and so you would go through that renew process and change it to the new thought, the new truth that you want to have and that you are working towards changing, that thought too, and then also backing it up with the word, which is the W in the renew process. But yeah, so absolutely, like it's a lot of mindset. Like we're doing these behaviors a lot, mostly because of things we're believing, whether about ourselves, about situations, circumstances, and then that will back up into the thoughts that we're thinking about that thing. Because one of the things someone said once was, our world that we are experiencing is really in our heads. Obviously, physically, it is a real thing, but it's our perspective about it and what we're thinking about it, which in turn, you know, um, impacts our behaviors and what we're doing about it. So, yeah.
Wow. Okay. So I need a copy of Christ Over Cookies, please and thank
Absolutely.
you.
I will send
We'll
you
be
one.
ordering that today. You also have, like I mentioned before, the podcast Overweighted. So if people are
Mhm.
just loving this conversation and want to dive a little bit deeper, the book and the podcast are going to be great resources for you guys. But before we go, because we just talked for an hour, no problem,
Wow,
Malika.
wow.
Um, but
Good
before we go,
conversation.
I did want to mention the summit that you have coming up. It's the Kingdom Women's Virtual Health Summit. And we're going to be talking about all things health, not just
Yeah.
physical health. So, can you share with everyone maybe some of the different topics that you're going to be hosting, some different speakers with, and just a little bit more about that?
Yeah, absolutely. Like you mentioned, it's the Kingdom Women's Virtual Health Summit. And originally it was just going to be physical health. And I was like, you know what? No, it needs to be whole health. It needs to be
Mm,
all areas of life because physical is just one piece of it. You know, like we were saying, we're spirit, soul, and body. So we need to address all areas, not just the physical. So yeah, we are having someone will be speaking on physical health as well, but we have a doctor that's going to come in and speak on women's health. And specifically, what we were just talking about, like you mentioned, that 1 week during the month, you know, she's going to teach us how to honor our bodies and those cycles and knowing
mm,
when maybe we should pull back on some of the things that we're doing so that we can continue to be able to pour out to others, even during those times. We have someone coming to speak on financial health. And so she's going to give us kingdom principles to de stress our money. We have someone even with holistic health. It won't be new age at all. Don't worry. But someone speaking on
a good
holistic health,
caveat. Yeah.
right, from a kingdom perspective.
Cool.
Yes. And yeah, so many different areas of health. And we have an amazing speaker speaking on relational health because we know relationships, um, the our the way that we interact with other people really affect other areas of health as well. And so Brittney is going to be coming to speak on relational health, and I'm super excited about that. But yes, all areas, it's not just physical health. And that's going to be at the end of May, May 22nd through the 26th. It is completely online. And if you can't make it live, then we will have replay access available for you as well. So super excited about that.
Awesome. Malaika, tell everyone where they can find you on social media, join your group, where they can sign up for the summit, all of that good stuff before we go.
Thank you. All the things. So I am Malaika Burley across all social media. So mainly IG and also on Facebook. I'm also Malaika Burley on YouTube, but you can find me there. And the tribe, if you are a woman that is looking to lose over 50 pounds, you can join me in Transformation Tribe. It's transformationtribe.vip. But anyone come and join us, any woman come join us for the Kingdom Women's Virtual Health Summit. That is at www.kwvhs, because Kingdom Women's Virtual Health Summit, kwvhs.com, and you can register there for free.
Awesome. I can't wait to do that. That's going to be so much fun. I hope you guys
Yes.
will join us for that. If you've enjoyed this conversation today, definitely go grab yourself a copy of Christ Over Cookies. Subscribe to Malaika's podcast, and definitely do not miss the health summit that we've got coming up as well. So thank you, Malaika, for your time today. This has been great. I learned a few things. I have a few
Awesome.
things to start implementing. I'm probably be texting you for that encouragement throughout the week. But I'm excited to help people shift their mindset on what it means to really take care of themselves and give themselves grace. They don't have to be perfect. You just gotta do the thing, right?
Mhm. Yes. Thank
Thanks
you.
again. We'll see you guys on the next episode. I will make your name famous from now on, so people will praise you forever and ever. Psalm 45:17. If you liked today's episode and want more info, check out lifejesusstyle.com and hashtag lifejesusstyle on social media.